Okay, so we're doing for our daisy the same stitch we did up here for our satin stitch. It's just a little bit of a different shape. So it'll just be more of a refresher and more of just going over how to do this on a different shape. And we'll just do a quick tutorial to get you off and stitching. So straight down the center, we're using 3 strands of the DMC 3865, and we're staying on the outside of our daisy line. And this one is actually a bit more even as far as the outside to the inside than our other flower petals. The other flower petals on our last one were quite different in size from the top of the petal to the center, so you had to do a lot more of the staggered stitches. So for this one, I'm going to do a short one here. You can probably still do 2 short, 1 long, but you might not have to do as much around the edges of the short and long than you did on this last one. But I like to start with the short and long through the center, just so I make sure that I have enough. And I think I skipped a stitch in it because I can see my black line there. So is this the technical way to fill a stitch in? Maybe not, but I'm going to just throw a stitch in the center there. I could pull it all out. I could pull out that last stitch and move it closer, but I don't typically like to do things the hard way. So we've got actually 3 short stitches. So I'm going to do my long now. And it just pops in the side. Those are almost in the same hole. So for this flower, we're keeping our top stitches, the stitches at the top of the petal, quite close together to create that really nice clean edge around the top. That is why I ended up throwing an extra stitch in there. And so I've done 1 short. I'll do 1 more short, a little longer, but still short. And then I'm going to throw in my long, and I'm going to do the rest probably of my stitches long because I still have a decent amount of space at the bottom to throw in my long stitches. And I've probably got 3 stitches left and enough space for 3 at the bottom. Looking at that, I can see that I want to throw 1 more stitch in there. And how I'll do that is I'll literally just run between the stitches that are already there and just stop short. And I've created a little bit of a short stitch in there. Sometimes when you're working with 3 strands and you're working on such a small space, you do notice that it's hard to get your stitches close enough, and sometimes you just realize that you could have included 1 more stitch in there, and it's okay to toss it in there. Better filled than not. Okay, so a little longer than the last one, just to cover the end. And then all the way down to the center. Looks like I did the same thing on this one too. And part of the reason that you're seeing like that there's a gap there is because there is a black line. So if we didn't have that black line, you might not have noticed, because it's a white fabric, that there's like a gap there. So yes, there is sometimes parts of the pre-printed fabric that can make it a little finickier, but just as long as we're watching for it and we're being careful, we can cover it all. Probably the white fabric, or sorry, the white thread is the one where you'll obviously notice it the most because it's the biggest contrast. But the little patience and attention to detail, which if you've ever followed me, if you've followed me before, you know that attention to detail actually isn't my strong suit. Okay, so we're almost done this petal. And these petals are all pretty much identical, so you probably don't need to see me stitch any more of them. I've given you all of my tips and tricks, and you can see it's a pretty straightforward staggered satin stitch. So we are finished. I'm just gonna, oops, I snagged that one. Smooth out. Just be careful when you're running your needle along that. It's actually not maybe the best idea sometimes because you can make it worse than better. Okay, and then so there is your satin stitch in 3 strands, and then we'll obviously go back and we'll fill our center with our French knots, and I'll meet you back once you're done all your petals to do your French knots in the center there. Again, like I've said a few times, we're gonna, if I was doing this pattern without as the example in the tutorial version, I would wait until I was done my Cosmo to go then do all of my little yellow French knots, but I'm gonna show you the tutorial in together with each flower. So we're doing our French knots and just the same tutorial as we've done before. So this is just a nice refresher. We're coming up from the back of the thread, the fabric, wrapping our thread 1, 2 times around our needle, pushing our needle back in close or through the same hole, sliding our knot down till it's nice and tight at the base of the fabric, pushing our needle in a little more, grabbing it from the back, and pulling. So hopefully these tutorials for the French knots are making them so simple for you. I know French knots is probably considered one of the more difficult stitches. So I'm hoping that this is giving you everything you need. So 2 wraps, push down, pull, hold the tension, and pull. So if you follow me on social media, or if you don't follow me on social media, this will be news to you. If you follow me on social media, you may already know that I have a 2.5-year-old pug. So right before I started the French knot tutorial, when I was talking, I could hear him in the background getting himself all nice and comfy and situated on the sofa next to me. And one of the reasons that sometimes I don't do video tutorials, or I struggle to do video tutorials, is because he cannot be away from you. If you put him into a kennel while you're in the house, he'll just scream. Like, it's not a bark, it's not a whimper, it's an actual screaming sound. So you'll hear him in the background of my videos clanking around on the hardwood floor, or you'll hear him snorting and making himself comfortable, or you'll hear him snoring or heavy breathing. He is a character. So if you're wondering what some of those sounds in the background are, they are my pug named Pickles. Okay, so hopefully that has given you what you need for the French knot tutorial, and we will see you back on our lavender. We're just gonna finish these. If you haven't already heard me say it, you can hold off on these French knots until you're done your Cosmos, and then you can do all your French knots for your Cosmos, your Daisy, and your Lilac at the same time, just to save having to change your needle color a number of times. So we'll see you back in just a second.